Chapter 90, 20 Years of Disaster. It's normal for a little girl to love cats. When Yan Lin saw it, he couldn't help but look at her and smile. Everyone's eyes were attracted by Zhang Xuning, but almost no one noticed the stiffness of Xie Wei at that moment, and when he turned his gaze again, Xie Wei's whole person was already flawless. Shen Zai looked at Xie Wei curiously. Is Mr. Xie going to Chengqing Hall? Xie Wei didn't speak. The housekeeper bowed to Shen Zai and explained with a smile, exactly, it is rare for a distinguished guest like young Master Xie to visit, and Master Ho specially invited young Master to come over and speak. It's no wonder. The government and the opposition all knew that Xie Wei was easy to get along with, but they rarely heard of him having a close relationship with anyone and had a good relationship. It's always been people who want to talk to him and visit him, and I haven't heard of him taking the initiative to visit anyone. Knowing that he was to be crowned in a moment, no one dared to say anything to delay him. Of course, Xie Weiwen was their husband, and Ben didn't have much to say. After a few words of greeting, the butler led Xie Wei and walked through the corridor, went around the hanging flower gate behind him, and went in the direction of Chengqing Hall. Seeing his figure go away, Zhang Xuning finally breathed a sigh of relief. When my heart is relaxed, the strength of my hand is also relaxed. The restless little flower cat got the opportunity, and immediately kicked her legs, ran out of her arms, meowed, jumped on the railing, and disappeared into the rockery stacked by the water's edge. It was only then that she felt a thin tingling sensation coming from her wrist. When I looked down, I didn't know when there was a blood mark on my wrist. At first glance, I knew that it should have been scratched by its fluttering paws when I was holding the cat. It's just that her mind was too focused just now, and her attention was not on it at all, so she only felt anything, and it wasn't until this time that her spirit relaxed and she felt pain. Shen Zai also looked at the direction where Xie Wei disappeared, and couldn't help but poke Yan Lin with his arm, and teased, the noble sons of the capital city, in the future, you Yan Lin will have the biggest face, and you can ask Mr. Xie to pick up the words for you, but I don't know how many people will be envious. Yan Lin also retracted his gaze at this time. He lowered his eyes slightly and said, it's mostly for the sake of my father's face. King Yanping didn't care about so much, so he coaxed on the side and said, no matter what, it's always a good thing. Seeing that it will take an hour to hold the crown ceremony, everyone is a guest today, Yan Lin is the master, and the master is a guest. We're finally here, and you're going to have to entertain us, right? Yan Lin looked at him with a smile, what do you want to do? King Yanping was not very old, and he looked left and right, as if he was afraid of being discovered by someone, so he blinked and said, is there any wine? When they heard this, they laughed in unison. Although it was proposed by King Yanping, it was really rare for everyone to get together like this, and even Shen Zai agreed. Yan Lin couldn't do it, so he had to ask Xing Feng and his subordinates to fetch some wine and put it under the cherry tree, and sit down with everyone to play and drink.
星号.
The housekeeper stopped in front of Chengqing Hall and only knocked lightly on the door. Master Ho, young Master Xie has arrived. There was a coughing sound from inside, as if he was a little anxious to get up, and some old voices even concealed some emotions that others couldn't fathom. Please come in quickly. So the butler pushed the door. Xie Wei stood in front of this door for a moment before walking in. Winter days are not as bright as summer. Most of the windows in the house were covered, and there were no lights, so it looked a little dim. There was a faint bitter smell of medicine in the air. On the bed with the golden hook hanging the curtain, Yanji Ho Yanmu has added a lot of old age in just this time. His temples are dyed a little frost white, but his eyes are already as sharp as lightning, and he suddenly fell on the person who walked in from the outside. The restraint of the body is full of the aura of the abyss, and it is calm and a little heavy. The mountains and the sea, the line of chanting and picking roses, like a saint, but also like a hermit. The long eyebrows are indifferent, and the eyes are deep. Yan Mu stared at his facial features carefully, as if he wanted to catch a glimpse of some familiar shadows from this unfamiliar outline, but no matter how he searched for his memories, 20 years had passed. No matter how clear the face was back then, it was eroded by the years. Moreover, it was only a child of 6 or 7 years old, and it was really a bit of a fantasy to find the outline of the past from the face of a mature young man. Not everyone grows up and is still the same as they were when they were young. It's just that when people feel like it in their hearts, how do they look like it? Yan Mu coughed twice more and waved his hand lightly. Young Master Xia, please sit down. Yan is sick, and he can't go out these days. Treat Mr. slowly, please forgive me. Mr. is willing to come, which really makes our mansion shine. Xia Wei sat silently on the brocade stool next to him. Yan Mu said, the dog is stubborn, and he was selected to enter the palace to study when Yuan Pavilion, and I heard that Mr. Duo took care of it. He didn't bother him, did he? Xia Wei said, the prince is not stubborn, he is very sensible, and there are few worries when he is studying in Wen Yuan Pavilion. Ho Yes family has a deep history, and the discipline is also very strict, and the younger generations are. It's only a shallow learner, but it's just a little restrictive. Junior. In terms of age, Xia Wei is indeed a junior. But as an official in the court, even the Xiao family has to give him 3 points of thin noodles, and he has never heard that he has called himself a junior in front of Xiao Yuan, the Duke of Dingguo. Yan Mu's heart tightened a little. But after that, there was a bit of desolation, and he sighed, if Mr. Xia is a shallow learner, there may be no well-educated people in this world. You look at Yan Lin's naughty appearance of playing and playing, you think it's good, you should have never seen a really well-behaved child. In the past, Yan Lin had a cousin, who read and studied literature, and he was smart and likable. In addition to playing the piano, he is poor, but he is willing to practice hard. Such a young child knows that it is too rare to endure hardship. My sister used to take him back from the Shaw family to play, and when I saw him, I thought that it would be nice if my child was born like this in the future. It's a pity that King Pingnan rebelled against the Tianjiao rebel party, and once surrounded by heavy troops, before Yan Lin was born, the child was gone. Xia Wei lowered his eyes, but the fingers that were gently placed on his knees trembled, and he slowly clenched into fists before he sat firmly. Yan Mu's eyes turned red, leaning on the bed, his eyes were a little empty, and his voice was a little vicissitudes, but there was a reproach and pain for the difficult world, such a small child, more than 6 years old and less than 7 years old. On a very cold day, the snow covers and freezes together. His mother stumbled out of the palace as if mad, and tore away those who stood in her way, until she reached the gate of the palace, where the snow was piled high, and dug with her hands, and when she could not dig up, she snatched the swords of the soldiers beside her, and snatched them from their hands, and smashed them one after another. The ice and snow were so hard and thick that the blood that flowed out of them froze together, and the iron chisel struck it, and the hands were numb, and the skin was soaked in blood. Dig out a child, 5 or 6 years old, but the ice and snow have stuck to the flesh, and it is impossible to see who it is. It was the family crying that pulled her back. Xia Wei sat motionless, like a statue. Yan Mu looked at him again, with tears in his eyes, and his voice poured out the irrepressible pathos. He is only so old, he has never even been out of the capital. That winter, it was so cold, and I don't know if there was a lamp in the palace, whether there was a fire or not, and whether someone would cover him with a quilt at night. How ruthless is it that he is willing to push him out? If God has eyes and mercy, and lets this child live in the world, I don't know what he should look like. Xia Wei finally closed his eyes slowly, his Adam's apple swelled, and after a long, long time, he opened his eyes again as if he had forced something down. He wanted to smile at Yan Mu. However, the corners of his lips were too heavy to bend up, so he could only put on a blank face and said in a low voice, Jiren has a heavenly appearance, and since he is merciful to the heavens, he should be told to go through all the calamities and ponder into a tool. Good, good. Yan Mu actually laughed, although he laughed out of tears. He felt that the depressed chi accumulated in the past 20 years gushed out of his chest, turning into a full of pride. It should be through the calamity, it should be a crafting tool. His sister returned home in a fit of rage, but she never wanted to believe that the child was buried in the grave of the 300 righteous children. It's a pity that the world is so big that there is no news, but he is just a little child. No matter how smart he is, how can he escape the catastrophe of the siege? After all, I can't find it. Everyone felt that it was just that the mother didn't believe in the child, until more than half a year ago, when the Pingnan Wang Yudang was caught by their people. He claimed that when they slaughtered the capital with the heavenly sect, the son of Ding Fei was not among the 300 righteous children, but was taken away by the head of the heavenly sect. Yan Mu didn't dare to think about what kind of life the child from the two high-ranking families and the noble blood was in the hands of such a cruel and vicious rebel party, and how many people did not know the suffering. As long as you think about it, you will feel that it is like burning in the 5 hearts, and you will not be stable. At this moment, he only stretched out his hand tremblingly to the young man in front of him. Xie Wei got up, walked to his side, and when he stretched out his hand, he was held tightly by Yan Mu, and the strength was so great that it hurt to hold it. When he raised his eyes again, he was facing Yan Mu's wide-open bloodshot eyes. It is full of monstrous hatred and hatred. In the end, it turned into deep sorrow. He looked at him in a hoarse voice, when you came, there should be a cherry tree in front of the Qingyu Hall, which has been planted for 22 or 3 years. When it was first planted, it didn't bear much, so the child sat on the steps under the eaves and read a book, and looked at the tree, and looked forward to the ripe cherry day by day. Now it grows tall and lush, and in summer, under the green leaves, there are red fruits. On the summer solstice next year, Mr. Xie might as well come and taste it. It is much sweeter than many years ago. Xie Wei's throat was already choked, and after a long time, he was so low that he couldn't hear it, and said, okay. After Yan Mu finished speaking, he was a little tired. He never asked why the child hadn't come to recognize his relatives earlier if he was still alive and in this world. Xie Wei retreated from the house. The light on the porch was too bright, piercing into his eyes and into his heart, and there was a burning pain in his chest, so that he couldn't help but raise his hand to press his heart hard, staggered 2 steps, and held onto the pillar with one hand, and his nails sank into the column to leave traces, so that he did not fall. His brow furrowed, and his face turned pale. The butler not far from the door was startled and hurriedly came over to help him. Xie Wei stood firm on his own. The butler was shocked and worried. Are you okay? Xie Wei slowly let go of his hand, and the bottom of his eyes was clearly angry, but at this moment, he was deeply pressed into the overlapping mask, and when he raised his eyes again, he was as calm as promised, but it was extremely quiet, like stagnant water. It's not tight, it's just that there are some cold and palpitations.